Welcome to the Natural Podcast, where we explore the depths of holistic health, uncovering the interconnectedness of our emotions, mind, body, and spirit. This episode is dedicated to individuals who are on a quest to uncover their truth, understanding their genetic and spiritual DNA, and learning how to harness this knowledge to achieve optimal health. But this isn't just another health podcast. Natural Podcast is here to ignite a spark of hope within you, reminding you of your innate potential for greatness. You are pure love, capable of living life to your fullest expression. Are you ready to embark on a transformational journey to achieve optimal health? In today's episode, we have Greg the Hydrogen Man. He was struggling to find answers and overcome extreme depression due to his compromised immune system, tumors, autoimmune issues, gut health, arthritis, wheelchair-bound immobilities, and very serious heart condition. He began his own journey to heal himself and discover hydrogen along the way. Studying the complex compound for 4 years, he implemented it into his health regime and reversed his health challenges. Greg discusses the endless health benefits of hydrogen, including longevity, gut health, and improving chronic health conditions. Greg also talks about how it's helped protect against EMF radiation, topical applications for skin, tumors, hormone support, and even viruses. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, Greg.
Oh, thank you actually very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
You're most welcome. As we were talking just before, I asked you a bit about your hobbies, and you said to me that you love everything cars, and you yourself were going to be a professional race driver. Tell us a little bit about that. That's a pretty interesting hobby to have.
Yeah, I was deep into cars before the day I could walk. I was literally crawling around the floor. My mom always told me that I loved cars. Ever since I can remember, I've been a car guy. My father was a car guy. And then I got involved in a lot of everything automotive. And then I did get into racing. I was good at it. And I got involved with that, even as far as doing some tryouts with Honda and going semi-pro and then getting ready to go pro and getting actually back up from Honda. Honda saw me race. I did go to race actually at Twin Ring Motegi in Japan. And I got to, I was seen by Honda. And they made me an offer, and it's a long story, but I started having a lot of medical issues, and that really changed a lot of things.
Yeah, 100%. That's pretty interesting. I love that you got to explore a little bit about Japan and get onto the race course, which is amazing. So Greg, I introduced you in the intro, so audience knows a little bit about your story, but I want to get to know you and everything that you've been through and how you got to hydrogen. We've got about 50 minutes or so to talk about things. I'm pretty sure there's a lot there, but give us a little bit about information about how you all got here today.
Yeah, so ultimately here, I'm going to clean the lens here real quick. It looks like there's dust. Ultimately what happened, the getting straight to the point, ironically, I worked in the medical field for a little over 20 years. And working in medicine changed my perspective about medicine because I didn't actually I didn't want to be a doctor. And the truth is I didn't want to be a health guru. I didn't want to know everything about health. It just was not my interest. I didn't care. In fact, truth be told, I actually was the kind of guy who would go grab those 99-cent burgers and some top ramen. And I just didn't care. I don't know why. I thought, I guess I'd be fine. I guess maybe we do that in our youth. And that was a life that I lived. And then, of course, I did eventually start getting sick. But before that, it's a very strange story. And I won't get into it because it's actually quite long, how I ended up in the medical field. And I did end up in the field, though. And the first 10 years, there's so much that I learned about how it works. And it was a shock to me. I know so many specialists, so many doctors. Like I said, I worked in the field for so long. The second 10 years were just a repetition of the first 10. I became so proficient at the things that they do, and I began to see the limitations of the things that they could actually accomplish in Western medicine. And it was a heartbreaker. And I remember thinking to myself, I hope I never get sick like that. And then that's exactly what happened to me. I ended up getting extremely ill. To the point where I'm technically not even supposed to be alive right now. They told me I was basically going to die. And that's basically what happened. And when I got sick, of course, I still looked to Western medicine, knowing that they didn't have answers for me, but you don't have any options. and they were not very helpful. And I ended up having to find my own way because it was either that or death. That's literally what it came down to. And so I ended up having to do a lot of learning. It was really hard for me to get interested because for me, I have to be really interested in something that comes from my heart. I just can't fake it. I can't have my brain in it. Like I may want to be the best, whatever in the world, the best gardener, but if I can't get my heart in it, I just can't do it. Um, I do have, it's embarrassing to share this, but I do have Asperger's. So my tendencies are when I'm really interested in something, I I become really good at it. And in fact, I become very proficient in it, and I become extremely good. And if I'm not interested, I can't do it. And so there's very things that I'm good at. So my Asperger's, I can make breakthroughs and I can see things the way other people can't see, but I have to be interested in my heart. And if I were to share something with you personally, that's very personal to me, is when I was at the lowest that I could be in regards to my health, to the point where I couldn't walk, I couldn't even work a remote control. So I would try to change the channel on the television. I couldn't do it. My joints hurt so bad, and I had numerous medical issues that were very extreme. And probably like a lot of us do when we're at a low point, because I had watched all these YouTube, videos and talked to health gurus and seen experts and talked to doctors and people want to sell supplements and all these different things. And it was very frustrating to me because I spent a small fortune trying to get better and it wasn't working. And that was part of my path. And at my low point, I prayed. I mean, this is what I think a lot of people do when we're at a low point. And I'm not even religious, but I did make a prayer. And ultimately, my prayer was, if I'm to be vulnerable here with you guys, or with you, my prayer was, look, if you can just lead me to, I wasn't even asking for a miracle to heal me. I just wanted to be led to the answers that could potentially really heal me. And I should say, before I keep going, I'm not going to give any medical advice today, right? I'm not making any medical claims, and I'm not making any claims for or against any product or products. I just want to put that out there because I know how crazy it is out there. But I made this prayer and I asked for guidance and for almost like help to get my heart interested so that I could find the answers that could potentially help transform my health. And I made a promise. My promise was, if you can help me do this, I promise that I'll share it with others. And I will help others, because I just knew that whatever would help me would most likely help the majority of people. And that was my prayer. And it must have been within a week or two. There's just something that shifted. I can't begin to describe it, and I'm not going to even try because it's just too much. But something shifted, and I began to see things differently. And I began to read a lot of scientific papers about health, a lot of cutting edge, breakthroughs and different things that most people have a hard time really reading about, and it's difficult to understand, and it's tedious, and figuring out so that you can apply it to your life. And that is when I stumbled upon the scientific data about hydrogen. And I was extremely skeptical. I thought, this stuff sounds way too good to be true. And for people who don't know me, I'm extremely skeptical. I am literally like the doubting Thomas of humans. Like, you can't convince me of something. You better have some either really good proof, or I need to see something for myself to really change my mind. And I thought hydrogen was a scam. I really did. And I didn't use it for almost 4 years. And my health was so bad, and I became so desperate that I went back to it. And I'd been reading the data for a long time. And that's when I really started looking into, once I began to see how amazing hydrogen was, I realized by all my research, I wanted to know where this data was coming from and who was funding this data, because I was still skeptical. And I realized it was coming out of Japan, and that even Japan had a lot of issues in regards to getting it legalized. The government was against it. And it's a big thing that happened. And there's so much scientific evidence. But then I was like, well, how do I even get my hands on this hydrogen stuff? Let's say I'm already sold on it. Where do I get it? You can't just go to a corner drugstore and say, hey, give me some molecular hydrogen. And then let alone how to use it. So there is no university in the world. There is no medical, like, you can't go and try to become a doctor and they teach you about this, because nobody actually knew. It was too cutting edge. And the only people that were using it medically and that had all this scientific evidence was Japan. And I started trying to use it with cheap products, which was a huge mistake. I was using things like these little hydrogen bottles,
Yes.
and I was using hydrogen tablets, and I was using all the wrong things, not even realizing that some of these things, at least in my opinion, it's an opinion, but my opinion is based on knowledge that I've accumulated, that these things might potentially be bad for me. And I was like, what? This stuff's bad for me? And I didn't understand it. So I took a huge dive into it. And then I learned that hydrogen production is not all equal. There's numerous different ways to make hydrogen. And I became a hydrogen production specialist because it's like anything. Let's just say, for example, whether it's cars or vegetables, the way you produce vegetables, they're not all the same. Some have pesticides and herbicides and soils that have been depleted. And there's a certain way to grow food that can be optimal. And it's the same thing for hydrogen. I think the same thing goes for many aspects in life. The way you build a house, you can build a crappy house and it could leak water and make mold and the foundation gets all rocky. And this goes for everything in life. And in the end, hydrogen was no different. It was extremely complicated. I had to learn so many things that I did not want to learn about, but I did, and I did it for the betterment of myself. And I've chosen to share with people because I think it's so important. And in my personal opinion, America's got it totally wrong. That almost everybody in America who's talking about hydrogen, and not just hydrogen, water also. I became not just a hydrogen expert, I became a water expert. This is a third-party lab test on water, as you can see here. And the reason I had to become a water expert on top of all this is because water is going to be used on some of my protocols that I've created for myself to transform my life. Water is used as a carrier for the molecular hydrogen. And for people who don't understand what molecular hydrogen ultimately is, I'll make it really simple. It's a gas. It's a type of gas. Just like oxygen is a gas. Just like ozone is a gas. Just like hydrogen is a gas. And so gases are a very unique thing in this world. And it all works. You can use them synergistically if you know what you're doing. And it was a long road. It was a lot of work. But I have a lot of answers. And I know how to share them with people because I've seen them work now. I followed the data. I created protocols that made sense. And it has absolutely transformed not only my life, but a lot of people's lives that I've known. So it's been a really crazy path.
Yeah, sounds like a crazy journey. And, you saying about Asperger's being embarrassed to share it, I think it's a superpower. I think it's absolutely amazing. And it's 100% a superpower that individuals have to be able to do what you do, get the answers, research it, but it comes from the heart. So I love that. And I love the prayer that you shared. And you're like, assist me, and then I will guide others, which, that's so beautiful. I love it. I got goosebumps as you were saying that. Greg, and you said you got sick. Tell us a little bit about like the symptoms that you had, like what was happening to you. Did it come up all of a sudden, all of the symptoms? Was it a build-up? Tell us a little bit about that.
So it was a buildup. I started having certain medical issues, which I was ignoring. And again, I was one of these guys that ate the 99-cent burgers. And if I had a little something going on my body, I was like, whatever, I'll push through it. I always thought that I think I'm a little bit like my father this way. I just thought I could push through anything. And I did. And I pushed through it. And I had problems. I had symptoms. But I kept modifying my life to get through it. I continued to ignore it. And if I were to give you the list of issues wrong with me, I had a lot of problems. One, I had autoimmune issues. So my immune system was absolute trash. I would get sick really easily. And then once I got sick, it would take literally like a month or more to overcome a common cold. And then I remember I would finally overcome the cold. And within a week, because I had bad habits, literally within a week, I would get sick again if I didn't try to be a good boy. And so that was one of the major issues. I had a lot of gut issues. I had a lot of inflammation throughout my body that was causing so much pain that it was getting more severe. I mean, I was pushing through it, but it got so severe to the point where I couldn't walk. And I literally couldn't use a remote control. I couldn't play video games. I couldn't change the channel on a television. I had so much joint pain. It even hurt to drive. I couldn't do it. It was very painful. On top of all that, I will tell you that my liver, my kidneys, they were not optimal. They weren't failing completely, but they just weren't at their best, which was causing a lot of other issues. A lot of gut issues also, which probably had an effect on my autoimmune issues. I also had tumors in my body, so I was found to have multiple tumors in my body. Some of them I was aware of, some I wasn't, and so I had a lot of that going on, and a lot of them were in my nerves, and so they were a strange type of tumor. That's one of the reasons it was causing such extreme pain. And then on top of all this, I had a heart condition. And so my heart was a total wreck. And of course I saw a cardiologist. They verified and knew that I had a major heart condition. And I had had this heart condition a long time ago. The sad part is it was self-induced. I caused it. Well, it appears that I caused it. I guess I won't guarantee that. But I did some very bad things in my youth, and it destroyed my heart. And so the doctor even told me, like, you'd be lucky if you made it 10 more years. And this, by the way, was about 10 years ago. And he literally told me, you'd be lucky. And there is no solving this heart issue. We're probably going to have to do like an open heart surgery or one of these things. Yeah, it was such a wreck. It was a really, really bad time. It was very difficult.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of signs and symptoms. One comes and then the other one comes and you're like, nah, we'll push that aside, we'll push that aside. But then not being able to even, drive the car or, use the remote or, even focus or anything along those lines, there was so much pain through your body. That's a lot to live with. So I can understand why you and other people who are going through it are just like anything. Like, I will look for anything. And that's where your investigation and your hunt started.
I was very desperate, and some of these symptoms were even being reflected like on my skin. I had a ton of acne, a lot of problems with my skin, and I also had my nails were so weak. I would just get them caught on the smallest thing, and it would like almost tear them off, and that was really painful. And they didn't grow, properly. They weren't growing very fast. So I was seeing symptoms throughout my body, and it wasn't good, and it was very frustrating for me, and it made me very sad, and it was painful. The biggest driver was the pain.
Yeah, it is for a lot of people. And the interesting thing that you said is you said, you had the heart condition, but at the start of the podcast, you're talking about how you do things when your heart is connected to them. So it's interesting potentially, maybe not doing things in your life where your heart wasn't connected to your actions. And now it is. And, 10 years on, you're here and your heart's healed.
It is. That was, I absolutely shocked my cardiologist, and I started using these methods that I created for other people. And there's been numerous other people who've had heart conditions, and their conditions just went away. In fact, there's a woman who's almost 100 years old. I did a testimonial video on my YouTube channel because again, I share all this for free. It's a promise I made, and I'm definitely going to fulfill on it, and I have been. And there's a woman who was almost 100 years old and had multiple heart conditions. And she also was on pharmaceuticals for different issues in regards like blood pressure, for example, for almost 40 years. And she did my protocol because the doctors told her that, look, you're almost 100 years old. We're not going to do open heart surgery on you. You're basically going to die. That's basically what they told her. And her daughter reached out to me because she saw me, and they did my protocol. And I'm not kidding you. Her heart conditions, all of them, disappeared. And they had to take her off the pharmaceuticals because she was starting to be able to regulate her blood pressure and everything was fine all of a sudden. And even her doctor wrote an email and showing her medical records. And I did a whole video on it because that's not the only story. I have done, if I were to name to you, just a few of the conditions that I've seen throughout the years that I've been doing this, that I've seen resolve with my techniques. We're talking things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart conditions, arthritis, dementia, Alzheimer's, TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, a lot of people with diabetes. I've worked with numerous people with different eye conditions, things like glaucoma, macular degeneration. I've worked with people, obviously, with a lot of like different joint pain and things of that nature. I've worked with people with different liver conditions. The things that I have seen are so hard to believe that I can't even believe that my protocols work so good. I can't believe it, but I've seen it repeatedly, even to the point where I've had doctors reach out to me, numerous doctors. There's a woman, just thinking of one of the examples. She was actually a young girl. She's in her 20s, and it was a very sad story. She had a stroke. I won't say why she had a stroke because, there's certain things that we're not supposed to talk about on the internet, but people probably can guess. but she had a stroke and she literally could not dress herself anymore. She couldn't talk. She couldn't walk. She was literally drooling all over herself. And the doctors had tried to work with her for almost 2 years to try to resolve these issues with zero success. And luckily, the mother heard about me from somebody else who had had really good results with my techniques. They told her about it. They followed my protocols, and her daughter is now walking, talking, dressing herself. The change was so dramatic that the doctors that had been treating her for almost 2 years said, this is unbelievable. And they wanted to know who I was and the techniques that I was using because they just couldn't believe what they were witnessing. And this is just one of numerous stories. I've been doing this for almost a decade, and people don't even know who I am still because, and probably the big driving force that I've learned in the world of health and even on YouTube and all this stuff is that a lot of it is money driven. So for people who have me on a show, I mean, I'm not paying people to be on shows and people don't pay me. So what I wanted, my goal was to share the information for free. And that has not been going so well because everything's so money driven. So it's been tough, but it's been unbelievable the things that I witnessed. And all I hope is that anybody who hears the show, share this information. Let people know about it because otherwise people are never going to find out. This is only going to be a grassroots thing. I don't see it happening any other way.
100%, and I love that. So many people are reaching out, and I'm going to put the link to that YouTube testimonial down on the show notes so people are able to access it and see your channel, but also see the testimonials and see for themselves what's been happening. Before we get into more on hydrogen, I want to know, you said, you did a bit of research on things before you hit to hydrogen. Tell us a little bit about the things that you tried for you to help get better before you discovered hydrogen.
So I tried everything. That was the method I took. I thought that if I tried everything, I would eventually strike gold. And so I tried numerous different types of diets. And that's another crazy one. I don't even like to talk about diet because it feels like it's talking about religion. Everybody is so married to their ideas.
So true.
And I'm not married to my ideas. I'm a data-driven person for the most part. In fact, I'll share something about how my brain works when it came to health. I wanted to make sure that, one, there was science to support it. Two, I did a lot of critical thinking to make sure that it made sense. Three, I actually looked at a lot of ancient scriptures for ancient wisdom that would be backed up by science. And four, I observed nature a lot. So I utilized these things to narrow it down to the techniques that I ultimately developed. And it was a lot of work and there was a lot of trial and error, even as much as me doing blood work regularly to make sure that my methods were actually working and making sure that they weren't going the wrong direction. And that allowed me to create very simple protocols too, because there's very expensive, difficult protocols out there, which I tried and they didn't work. And it was so expensive and so much effort. And it was very difficult. And of course, I even tried pharmaceutical drugs for different things too. And so my protocol entails a few things because I believe that health and the human body is synergistic. So it's kind of like a car. You can have a car with the best engine in the world, but if you don't have any tires on your car, you ain't going nowhere. And you could have the best tires in the world, but if you don't have an engine, you're going nowhere. And even if you have the engine and the tires, now you need a good frame for the body, for the car. There's so many factors in regards to health that are very, very similar. So I developed these techniques and I tried numerous different diets. I tried numerous different supplements. And I will give my opinion on here. I'm actually not a huge fan of supplements. Almost everything that I've been able to achieve, I've been able to do it with almost no supplements. I've seen too many lab tests on multiple things, including supplements, and I'm a little weary of them nowadays. I think that the supplement industry has been infiltrated much the way that, in my opinion, the pharmaceutical industry has been infiltrated. And so I'm not saying that there's no good supplements. I'm just really strict about the ones that I use, and I use very few of them because food is our true power. Because food, the body there's scientific evidence that shows that the body responds to food different than it does to like a multivitamin. And so I really developed all these different techniques. But yeah, I tried a bunch of stuff. If I were to go down the list, I probably can't even remember all the things because I tried so many things for so many years. And it was extremely frustrating. And none of them ever worked in the end. In the end, there wasn't a specific diet that changed everything. There was almost literally nothing. Though I will say this, and I'm always hesitant, but I'm going to share it with you. My own father, I remember, he was having issues with blood pressure, cholesterol, glaucoma, arthritis, and diabetes. Those were the issues that he was having. But when he saw the techniques that I was creating, he didn't want to do it. He's like, I don't want to do all the different diet. I don't want to do all these different techniques. The only thing that I'm willing to try, he said, is clean water, because I have a technique for cleaning my water, and it's not the same as any water filter out there. And if anybody wants to watch the information, it's on my video 388. All my videos are numbered. But all I did was clean water, because if you knew what was in our water, like even if I just opened up one page, look at all these crazy things that are in the water. And then another page. Look at all this stuff. All these are chemicals and crazy stuff. And I got pages of this stuff. I mean, you wouldn't believe what's in the water. It's unbelievable. Of course you're going to get sick. That's the way I view it. It's impossible that you won't. And so I learned everything about water filtration to clean my water to the highest degree. And with my father, I just did the cleanest water and the best hydrogen in the world, which matters. And then the best protocol on how to actually use them. And I remember from my dad, it was so amazing, because he basically said, I don't want to change anything, but I'm willing to do clean water and hydrogen. And me being the skeptical guy that I am, I thought, there's no way it's going to work for you, Dad, unless you do everything. Because it's kind of like saying, I want to lose weight and I'll change the way I eat, but I'm not going to exercise. It's like, no, you want to exercise and change the way you eat, right? You want to do everything to get the best results. But the thing that blew me away was he said, I'm only going to do clean water and hydrogen. And at first I was not very happy, but then I thought, you know what? This is a great test. Let's see if it can do it. And in the end, all those issues went away. Now, I don't like to tell people that, because then they're going to just be like, oh, all I need is clean water and hydrogen, and that's all I need. I think you'll get way better results if you implement other things, but it was extremely impressive when I saw his issues go away. Especially, his doctor was blown away about his glaucoma, because he had glaucoma for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And he was a very well-documented case where he has to go get his eyes checked every year. And it was unbelievable when he started testing negative for it. And the doctors, they could not believe the results so much that they brought him in for retesting. They literally were like, this is impossible. There's never been somebody like this. And so they brought him back for retesting. They thought there was problems with their equipment. And in the end, the results came back the same. And then they did it again 3 times, and they said the results came back the same. And they still wouldn't accept the results. They ended up they referred him to one of the number 1 specialists in the United States, which took a long time to get the appointment. And when he finally got it, they could not believe what they were witnessing. And I've done this repeatedly with doctors. The problem is, again, these doctors, they don't have time for interviews. They don't even want to do interviews. Everything is money driven. So I probably would have to try to pay these people, which I won't. So that's why, they've never done interviews. But I have had some emails from doctors, which I divulged in my YouTube channel. And I've had letters from doctors. And I've had doctors reach out to me and contact me. I've helped so many doctors and naturopathic physicians and quote-unquote health gurus to improve their health protocols, because most of them, when they reach out to me, they literally admit to me, now this is always off camera, but they admit to me that their protocols just don't really work that good. And probably another really big one was when I was doing blood work regularly. And I worked in Western medicine, so I know the rules. And one of the rules is you don't call a patient unless there's something wrong. Because if you had to call every single person to let them know that everything would look good, it would be way too many phone calls. And I remember myself getting a phone call from a doctor that I was utilizing for my blood work, who has got over 30 years of experience. And when she called me, I got worried, because I'm like, oh no, why are you calling? There must be a problem with my blood, and I know I'm doing some wacky things. And I thought maybe I'd made a mistake. But she called me because I asked her, I was like, look, I'm really worried that you're calling me. What's going on? And she said, calm down. I want you to relax. I said, just tell me what you found. And she said, I didn't find anything. She said, the reason I'm calling is because I've been doing this blood. I'm a blood specialist, and I've been doing it for over 30 years. And she said, I got to tell you, in all my life, I've never one time seen blood like yours. She goes, it's so incredible. She said, I had to call you. She goes, that's how curious I was about this one. Your blood is so amazing that even when it went to the lab, and my blood was with numerous people's blood, they have like a special tray with everybody's blood. And just by looking at it, all the lab technicians, they started to know who I was because they could tell my blood just by looking at it. And it was so unreal. And she admitted to me, and she'd probably hate for me to say this, but nobody knows who she is. But she said, I literally have so many patients that I'm unable to help. I have so many sick patients. And then she told me, even my own daughter is sick and I can't help her. And then she told me, she goes, even I have medical issues. And she goes, I can't even figure out how to help myself. And she told me all this off camera. And she said, please help me. She was calling me for help. She goes, how are you getting your blood like this? Because if your blood is at a certain place as far as your health, it transforms your body because it flows through your body. So it was pretty remarkable, and one of the other crazy things that have happened throughout this journey.
Yeah, that's insane, and I love that. They're like, yep, there's Greg's blood. That's amazing. You know, you shared a little bit about water. Let's go into that. I'm really interested because, yeah, there's so many things in water that we don't know about. If we just open up the tap and drink the tap water, what does that do to us? Is there damage involved? Like, what's in that we should be kind of wary of?
There's a massive amount of things in your water. When I help people, when people want me to do a consult with them, one of the first questions I ask them is, where are you located? Because I know the quality of water per location. And one of the things that you'll even notice, and not to get too deep into it, but super high autism rates, for example, in California, even more than the whole nation. And I know what's in California water. I've seen the lab reports. And a lot of people think they don't even know exactly what's causing autism. And it might be multiple things also that cause it. Just like health, it's not just necessarily one thing. But they have a major problem with their water. And the truth is all of the United States has a major problem with their water. And I would say even basically the world. And if I were, I could go over, like, we're talking about things fine like arsenic, barium, we're obviously chlorines and different things, fluorides. One of my biggest concerns is PFAS, and there's numerous different types of PFAS, which is known as a forever chemical. And if you want to read about forever chemicals and how they affect, for example, like cancer, potentially causing it, it's so nasty. And just look at these words. Some of these are just, you can't even pronounce them. And the biggest thing that I learned that really made me very sad is, who do you think that these contaminations affect the most?
Kids.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Why does it affect babies and children so much? Because their bodies aren't fully developed. So their liver isn't fully developed. Their kidneys isn't fully developed. Certain organs, their brain is not fully developed. And it affects them so much, I didn't realize that they're the ones who are the highest risk. And the other things I learned is, I didn't realize that there's radioactive contaminants in our water. Did you know that? Radioactive contamination. I never knew that. This is why I studied. I'm sorry?
That's so messed up. Like, so bad. Like, oh my gosh.
It's really bad. And then to take it to another level, certain biological contaminants, things like parasites, things like specific types of bacteria, certain types of viruses, all this stuff is in water. And your normal water filter will not eliminate it. And I discovered a way to eliminate virtually everything. And luckily, it's not that expensive. So it's way better than bottled water. For people who always tell me, well, I drink bottled water or I drink well water, you're going to have a really big surprise coming to you, because I've seen the lab reports. And bottled water appears to have the highest level of microplastics than anything you consume. That is really, really big, and it's a major problem. And so anyway, if people want to know, people probably want to know, like, how do you clean your water? If you want to go to a website called mypurewater.com, and of course, people love discounts. So if they want a coupon, I have a coupon code that is uprising144K, but it's what I call carbon distillation. It's a combination. And by the way, I learned about this method by observing nature and then by looking at the science. And if anybody wants to learn more about it in detail, in my video 388, I explain it all. By the way, not to mention mold in our water. There's just so many crazy things in our water. And that is the foundation to my protocols. It's clean water, if you can, clean air, and then hydrogen. Those are the most basic, fundamental things to transform your health, in my opinion. So
yeah. So did you say that the carbon helps clean the water?
Absolutely. So you need a combination. So the way that I discover this method is, one of the things that I do is I observe nature. So I'll ask you real briefly. Do you know how nature cleans water?
How does nature clean water?
I'm
Evaporates
sorry.
it? I don't. Evaporates it? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, you're really close. So basically it starts with hydrogen,
Okay.
which means it starts with the sun. Our sun is basically made of almost entirely hydrogen. It's also made of helium, but just so people know, helium is basically a form of hydrogen after fusion. So you have basically almost all this hydrogen, and it hits the water on the planet, like specifically typically in the ocean. And so when it gets the ocean hot, the water literally begins its ascension process. So ascension, which I know is more of a spiritual connotation, but it has everything to do with all this. So the water ascends, and through the process of ascension, it actually self-purifies. It's unbelievable. And then I found these ancient scriptural verses, even things in the Bible and other ancient scriptures where it says, pure as the driven snow, pure as white as snow. What people don't realize is that snow and rain is distilled water. And I did experiments on crops, different soils, different plants, and used different waters. It was unbelievable. Super clean water that ultimately is through the process of distillation. The results were so dramatic. And if you offered hydrogen on top of it, even more dramatic. So plants react to it. It was really impressive. And so that's how nature does it. Snow and rain is distilled water. So I started looking into lab tests in regards to the distillation and how it affects water. And I remember the reason this all happened was because when I was watching YouTube channels or different podcasts where everybody and their mother was given a different opinion about water. Like, oh, you should drink nothing but alkaline water. Oh, no, it should be spring water. Oh, no, it should be distilled water. Oh, no, it should be bottled water. Oh, no, it should be, it was so many differences of opinion. Oh, structured water, all this stuff. And it was really frustrating because I'm like, what exactly, which direction am I supposed to go? And with my critical thinking, I thought, what do I want out of my water? Because if really what you want is alkaline water, let's be honest. All you have to do is take tap water and take baking soda and put baking soda in your tap water, and voila, you'll have alkaline water. But is that really the answer? Is that really what's going to get you better? The truth is, in my opinion, no, of course not. So what did I want out of my water? And what I wanted was clean water. Can I just get clean water? Water that doesn't have all this garbage in it? Can I just start with that? And that's how I ended up coming to the conclusion by looking at contaminants that you have to go through the process of distillation and carbon filtration in order to just clean your water. And it was the only way. In fact, when you do this distillation process, it gets rid of viruses, bacteria, parasites, mold, and no other water filter can do that. In fact, other water filters are what's called a porous filter, like reverse osmosis, normal carbon filters. They accumulate basically garbage all over the filter, and then mold and bacteria and different stuff start growing on it. So one of the little secrets about water filter companies, and they would hate for me to share this, but I'm not going to name companies, but basically water filter companies, when they do lab reports, they do it when they have a new filter.
Yes.
But that's the sneaky part, because if they claim their filters filter out 5,000 gallons of water, what you don't realize is when the filter's new, your water quality may be here, but for every 100 gallons that goes through that filter, your quality is going like this.
Isn't that interesting? Worse. That's mind-blowing, yes.
Yes, and this is why I became an expert in the field. This is where my Asperger's kicked in. I went all out, all in, found the answers. And when you do carbon distillation, the quality of your water is always like this. It's always the same every single time. It's perfect.
Yes. And what's the difference between carbon distillation and what you just explained that other companies use?
So basically, other companies tend to use what's called a porous filter. Yes. I explained everything in my video 388, but basically It's a filter that has tiny little holes, little pores, and as water goes through it and stops contaminants, but those contaminants build up on the filter itself and oftentimes can make your water worse. And not to mention that these particular filters, it depends where you buy them, because a lot of them are coming out of China, and I've seen lab reports on these filters. And again, I'm not making claims and I'm not naming companies, but the lab reports have shown that sometimes the filters themselves are contaminated. And there's even been a lawsuit, I won't even name the company either, against a very well-known water filtration company. And that's why I don't really subscribe to just porous filters.
Yeah. Wonderful. Now let's talk about hydrogen. Tell me, I know we've spoken a little bit about it. So now that you wanted clean water and you figured out how to get clean water, you're like, I'm going to add hydrogen to it. Tell me, what is hydrogen? What's hydrogen water? Some people might be skeptic, like you said yourself were, because it's like a gas in water. People are like, what effect does that have on my cells? Is that going to impact me? Long term, are there studies that it's going to impact me? Short term, it might be amazing and all this stuff might be coming out. But yeah, tell us a bit about hydrogen.
So hydrogen becomes way more complex than cleaning water. We're talking a whole other level to the point where, if I'm honest with you, there is literally not one person in America who literally understands hydrogen water. And there's a lot of people out there who claim to be experts. And in my opinion, they literally don't have a clue. Because what they do is they look at the scientific data, which is really good from Japan, and they're like, oh, hydrogen's so good for you. And then they say, hey, you can get hydrogen from a little bottle. But they're
Yes,
not
those
explaining
bottles
to
are
you.
everywhere. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And even hydrogen tablets and things called Brown's gas and all this stuff that I would never use knowing what I know now. Because if you really think, and by the way, they make these things for like 20 bucks. If you really believe that a $20 little bottle is going to transform your life, you might want to think again. Because, and even big people out there, like I think Gary Brecka, who was on Joe Rogan, he was pushing these bottles. And now I believe that he's raising a lawsuit against them because he figured out the truth. Had he known who I was and given me a phone call, I would have told him right away. I would have saved him the trouble because I understand. I actually literally moved to Japan to study hydrogen production methods. I learned from the best in the world how we should be producing the hydrogen. And everybody in America doesn't get it. There literally is so much terrible information about hydrogen. And I believe it's going to take years before America realizes it. Japan realized a lot of it a long time ago because it's complex. You have to learn about the science of metals, which is metallurgy. You have to understand the different production methods of hydrogen, the different membranes. There's so many techniques of producing hydrogen, and many are better than others methods. And so it gets really confusing. And so typically what I do is I just tell people what I use, and I only use the best. So that's always been my thing. I go after the best to transform my health. So that way people don't have to do all the homework that I've done. It's been a really, really long road.
Yeah, I can imagine. So tell us a bit like, so you started drinking hydrogen water to get better. Did you get fixed straight away? Were you feeling better straight away? What was some of the symptoms that you're feeling?
So it does take time, and it depends on the person. So typically the best results I see are within 6 to 8 months if you're making hydrogen properly and you're actually using it properly with a proper protocol. However, a good example is, again, my father. My father, when he started doing all this stuff, within 6 or 8 months, all his conditions were gone except for one, and that was his glaucoma. And I remember when he got his eyes checked, because he gets them checked every year. I remember when he got his eyes checked, they're like, you still have glaucoma. The next year, because hydrogen is a lot like clean water. You're not only going to use clean water for one day, you're going to use it hopefully for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
right? If you want to stay healthy. So hydrogen is the same thing. And so in time, he was using it regularly because he was able to get off of all these medications. The worst medication that my father was on was a drug called meloxicam, which destroys your liver, by the way. And I've even known somebody who died from using it for too many years and it caused liver failure. But it makes you feel good while you're taking it because you have so much pain. And so my father went through that too. And luckily, I was able to get him off of these medications. That was a really big deal for me, and to get him off that medicine. But when he was getting his eyes checked, every year, it was still showing that he had glaucoma. And he actually called me on the third year because after the first 2 years, I gave up. I said, you know what, Dad, the fact that it worked on all these other things is great. The fact that it didn't work on glaucoma, so okay. So hydrogen doesn't work for everything, is what I originally thought. Then on the third year, he called me and he said, hey, and I was like, hey, Dad. He said, I'm at the eye doctor right now. And I was like, Dad, I already know that it doesn't work for the eyes. And he says, no, you don't understand. They just tested me for glaucoma and I'm showing up negative. And I was like, what? It was crazy. And he goes, they want me to come back in a couple of weeks and do it again. He called me again. It was continuously showing that his glaucoma was gone. His doctors couldn't believe it, but it took 3 years. And so remember that he had it for over 30 years. So one of the things that I've noticed is for every 10 years that you've had a condition, it takes about a year of using hydrogen. That's kind of what I've been shown and what I've learned. And it's something, again, and that's if you're doing hydrogen properly. If you're not doing it properly, I have seen Sadly, I just did a video today about it. Some terrible things happen with hydrogen as far as it harming people. I've seen it accelerate cancer. I've seen it literally cause cancer when it's not done correctly. And that's why I'm so gung-ho about trying to educate people on it. Not all the people out there who try to promote things just for the money. I never allowed that to happen because I was offered, actually. This might be an interesting story for you and your viewers, but I was contacted by numerous people and I turned down massive amounts of money to never promote, because I will not promote hydrogen tablets. I will never promote these little bottles. I will never promote or share stuff that is not good for people just because of the money. I will not do it. And so that was a really difficult pass because I've got a lot of flack from people in the hydrogen world because they want to continue to promote stuff that I won't. And so it's become a little bit about a battle, and they have tried to shut me down and silence me, and I have been threatened, and it's been pretty wild.
Yeah, it's insane. Absolutely insane. I love the story about your dad. Thanks for sharing that again. That's absolutely amazing, and he would be over the moon. So, Greg, how does hydrogen impact our cells? Like, what happens in our cells? I know you've mentioned things like it's antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor, and so forth. What does it do to our cells?
There's so many things ultimately that it does, but the biggest thing that I think the Japanese realized just going off the data is they had a list, and I wish I had the list for you, but it was almost 200 different medical conditions, and they had a list of them. They, like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart conditions, strokes, all these different issues. And then next to each condition, they had the pharmaceutical drugs or treatment that you'd ultimately need for each condition. So you have this huge list of conditions, and then a massive list of different pharmaceuticals, including more pharmaceuticals to combat negative side effects from the other pharmaceuticals. And it was an absolute mess. It was massive. And then they had one thing, and it was hydrogen. The reason they had created this list, and I saw this list for myself, was because they couldn't believe, we're talking about the scientists, they couldn't wrap their mind around how one thing like hydrogen could affect all these different health conditions that all these pharmaceuticals were needed for. Now, granted, if you took all these pharmaceuticals, I'm sure you know what it'll do. Anybody who wants to look up the top 3 leading causes of death. And most specifically, number 3, because number 1 and 2 is heart disease and cancer. But look at number 3, and it's going to absolutely shock you that it has to do with pharmaceuticals or medical interventions.
100%.
And it's crazy. And they were like, how can hydrogen do what all these things do? It's impossible, but yet we've seen it. They did so many scientific studies in Japan. They're like, how do you figure this out? And this is the conclusion that they came to. They came to the conclusion that 97 to 98% of all disease comes down to one thing, and that's what we call free radicals. So when you have oxidative stress or free radical damage, or even something called ROS, which is reactive oxygen species, these free radicals, wherever you find them, if you find a bunch of them in the liver, it's going to look like liver disease. If you have too much of them in the kidneys, it's kidney disease. Too much in the brain, and so on and so forth. And so basically, they realized that hydrogen appears to not only work as an antioxidant, it's not just an antioxidant. It is a selective antioxidant. And for those people who don't know, and please Google it if you want to see this, or you can take my word for it if you want, but antioxidants are not all created equal. If you were to look up the size of vitamin E versus vitamin C versus glutathione versus CoQ10, these are all antioxidants. If you look at the sizes of them, I don't even know if you're aware. Are you aware that antioxidants actually come in different sizes?
Yes, 100%. They all act differently. They're not all the same. Just because it has an antioxidant thing, it's like, well, what pathway does it work on? They all work on different ones. 100%. Yes.
That's right. And hydrogen is tinier than any antioxidant we know. See, antioxidants like CoQ10 are actually huge. It's like literally, if you think about the cells, because you were asking about the cells, it's like trying to push an elephant through your front door. It's not going to get through. Hydrogen is so tiny that it can easily penetrate into the mitochondria, easily get to the brain. It can literally get to any part of the body. There is no place that it cannot reach. And that's not the case for just any antioxidant. So it's unique. And on top of that, back to observing nature. Have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France? Or Lourdes, France?
No.
So Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France, depending on how you want to pronounce it, they have what is called the healing waters of Lourdes. Okay. And all these people would go there. It's a really Christian thing. And they drink the water, and people were having medical miracles. People
Wow.
literally couldn't believe what they were witnessing. So much so the doctors were tracking people's health before they drank the water and after, to make sure that it wasn't just placebo and that there was something real. And there were so many people, not just one, two, five, massive amounts of people that their lives are transforming because of this water. So they sent scientists to study the water. Remember, I told you, I observe nature because I believe that answers are within nature. And I believe that God gave us a lot of answers if we just look. And one of the things that they found out by studying the water, all these scientists, they all kept saying, we don't see anything. It's just H2O. There's nothing miraculous about this water. And this is why I love the Japanese. A lot of people don't know how tedious and detail-oriented Japanese are. They're unbelievable. And they literally tested the water and discovered what nobody else did, which is that the water had high levels of molecular hydrogen in it, which is a gas dissolved into the water. And that's where this research began. They literally started creating molecular hydrogen in laboratories and testing animals. And I actually wish I had the footage for you because I've seen it myself, where they would show mice that did and did not get the molecular hydrogen, and they would be bombarded with things like chemotherapies and radiations and even cancer and different things. And the results were dramatic. Like you could literally see it. It was so unbelievable. And that's how everything really began to take off. And nature does it. And now the scientists in Japan have clearly realized that molecular hydrogen has such a profound effect on the human body. And the truth is that nobody actually knows the full mechanism. Yeah, they know that it's a selective antioxidant. Yes, they know that it appears to function as an anti-inflammatory. Yes, they see that it helps with cell signaling. Yes, they see that it's absolutely incredible for the gut. In fact, I've worked with so many patients with Crohn's disease, celiac disease, IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, so many gut issues. The results that I've been able to have with a lot of the people that I work with are unreal. I've literally had people thank me for, like, they had spent, I just thinking of one woman, she had spent about $180,000 on doctors and treatments and supplements for many years. It wasn't, that was over a long period of time, and nobody could fix her. And she did my protocol, and not only did it fix her, she was like, this is so incredible. It fixed her in 6 months. And it was so mind-blowing, the positive effect that it has on the gut. And also, a lot of people get inflammation in the gut and leaky gut and all this type of stuff. Amazing results for that too. And so it's just been absolutely dramatic. One of the first research studies, by the way, on hydrogen was done on the mitochondria. So you were asking about the cells. And the results were, again, super dramatic. That's what kicked off so much other research. At this point, we don't have like 100 studies or 200 studies. At this point, it appears that we have over 2,000 studies to date. So it is very legitimate and actually medically used. A lot of people don't know that Japan is extremely strict when it comes to the world of medicine. And there's roughly 30 medical hospitals, medical university hospitals that are actually using hydrogen for numerous different medical conditions. And it's unbelievable. We are going to see a transformation in the future. The good news is, in regards to medicine and our understanding of it, and people don't even know that hydrogen has transformed current medicine as we know it, that people don't even know about. I'm going to use one of the forbidden words right now, and if I can't say it, you'll have to bleep it out. But have you ever heard of ivermectin?
Yes.
A lot of people don't know that ivermectin actually used to be something called ivermectin. And it worked pretty good, but it was actually transformed by hydrogen. And it transformed it into something called now ivermectin. It is one of the best drugs literally in the world. And a lot of people don't actually know that hydrogen was responsible for that. So there is a way that hydrogen can help us with our health. It's going to help us in the world of medicine. It's going to help us, in my opinion, in the world of agriculture. You should see the things that you can do agriculturally and with food. There's studies on this. They've taken food like an apple, for example, and measured the level of antioxidants and all this wonderful stuff about a fruit or a vegetable. And they literally have put it in hydrogen water for 20 minutes, take it out, retest it. The antioxidative properties of that apple go through the roof. So hydrogen is transforming our food. And I've been using these protocols again for my own health, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it's hard to believe at some point what it's doing. And again, I believe that the future is bright if we survive it with all the crazy things going on in the world. But for people who really need help, I'm glad that it's already available. Thank God, by the way, for a man in Japan Maybe in the future you'll divulge his story because his story is so unbelievable. But if I just told you briefly, the machine that I found that makes the best hydrogen, hands down, is not a Chinese device. If you do deep research on these bottles, you're going to find that they're actually made in China. This particular device, and I just went off the data, is actually purely Japanese machine. It was Japanese engineered, hand built by Japanese, lab tested and certified by Japanese. Everything was done in Japan because of this one man who sadly had a daughter who was born with a severe case of ALS, otherwise known as Lou Gehrig's disease. They told him that his daughter would be lucky to make it to the age of 5. And it's such a sad story, and it touches your heart, and I mean, it brings you to tears if you knew his whole story. But he knew about the latest data and research on hydrogen, and he knew that there was no equipment that you could use in your home that would make the best hydrogen in the world, real medical grade hydrogen. Even though a lot of people claim that out there, people claim they're making medical grade hydrogen. I would say don't trust it, in my opinion, because there's so much garbage out there. But basically, he got help from top hydrogen engineers and companies in Japan, and he set out to build the best machine in the world. And he was even advised that he could make it in China so he could save money and make it cheaper so that it could become a business. But he said, no. He said, I don't care about the money. I don't care about doing it in China. He goes, I am going to do everything in Japan because I want everything done right because I need the best for my daughter. And ironically, there was a huge thing in Japan where problems with hydrogen, just like in America, I believe there will be in the future about hydrogen tablets in these bottles, which is becoming more apparent already, but there's going to be more in the future. And basically that happened in Japan, which made his device shoot to the top. It became number one machine in Japan and in the world. Even the Chinese want his device. And I found the top hydrogen doctors. Like there's a really smart Japanese neurosurgeon, top of the heap, super smart. He said, I will only use this machine and I will only recommend this Japanese machine to my patients. He goes, it's the only one because nobody else is doing it to this high of level. And if anybody wants to look at the official equipment, because they're curious, of course, the official website is called holyhydrogen.com. And that's the official company. You'll see the official device. That's what I personally use. And that's what these top guys only recommend in Japan. And obviously, he's not financially being paid for any of that. He said he does it because it's the best. And the guy who created it created the best for his daughter. And just so you know, his daughter is now 17 years old. She defied all the doctors and everything that they said would happen. And she was supposed to be dead a long time ago. And she's still alive. And it's been an absolute miracle. It's unbelievable.
Wow, it's absolutely amazing. I love that you shared with us because my next question was going to be, well, how do you know to get the right hydrogen water to stay away from those bottles, those tablets, and things like that. But you shared that with us, so I really do appreciate it. And I can just imagine the research that went into understanding and finding this. So appreciate you going through all of that for us to give us the dot points and give us the ins and outs. But yes, Greg, you've been absolutely amazing, and there's so much stuff that I could keep talking to you about, like the agriculture. We could go talk more about hydrogen, water, and so many things. But I think this episode is definitely a Kickstarter for individuals to think about hydrogen water, to explore it, to potentially purchase that machine and see how it affects them, but also get in touch on your YouTube channel and watch that 388 video, which I'll put a link down in the link, and yeah, get in touch and educate themselves a bit more about hydrogen.
Yeah, and also to mention, it's not just hydrogen water, it's also hydrogen gas inhalation. And for my protocols, using both has been my technique, which ended up being copied. People stole my technique and actually lab tested this scientific study, which is actually in a way a good thing because what they ended up proving through the scientific study is that my method worked better than any other method ever, where I use a special technique where I use both the water and the hydrogen gas inhalation. So just hydrogen water is amazing, but the combination of both is where it's at. Now, if you just want to do hydrogen gas inhalation, I'm not a huge fan of just doing that. There's benefits, but the water's foundational. The gas is also good. And when you use them both together in a technique where I actually share in my video 337, in my opinion, it's the best one. And the science seems to actually support my methods. And the machine that I use and recommend does both, which is really good. Not to mention the other thing that almost nobody talks about is the nanobubbles. So they're using a super ultra nanobubble technology, which nobody can achieve what the Japanese are doing with this equipment. And that is actually another part of why it's so good. In fact, like for example, bioavailability. So the size of the bubbles actually matters, as crazy as that may sound. And so many things that they're doing that nobody else in the world is doing. So anybody who wants to support it, always just give the videos a thumbs up, subscribe, share. It's the only way this is going to get out. It's free for you guys to do that. And it's really hopefully going to help other people who find it, because there's so many people out there who are suffering in the world, and you run out of options. You go to your doctor, they want to throw some pill at you that is just going to put a band-aid on the issue. And a lot of people just don't know that you can transform your life. Me, I never needed to get the heart surgery, by the way. Totally fixed my heart, never got that huge scar. Same thing goes for a lot of other people that have reached out to me throughout the years. Same thing with heart conditions and all sorts of other stuff. But the heart one is just unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable that you never needed the heart surgery. So it's absolutely been bonkers. So I appreciate you having me on your show. And I really hope that this information is reaching people out there that it can impact. And only through the people is the information going to get out. So I just thank everybody who's listening and sharing this information.
100%, Greg, and I feel so blessed to be able to provide a platform for you to share this knowledge with all the work that you've done and all the research and everything that you've put into this. So I'm more than happy to share it, and hopefully people are able to benefit from it. But thank you so much for joining us on a Natural Podcast, and remember, you're pure love, capable of living life to your fullest expression. Information provided here is the opinion of Mihaela and it's for information purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mihaela does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. Under no circumstances shall the Natural Podcast, Mihaela, any guest or contributor to the Natural Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mihaela be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mihaela nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.